Well, hello and welcome to Outdoor Oklahoma. I'm Todd Craighead, and today I'm joined by our Wildlife Diversity Information Specialist, Gina Donnell. Thanks for joining me.
And thanks for having me.
You know, Gina, as a information specialist, you do spend quite a bit of time at a desk behind a computer.
Majority of the time, yes.
But every once in a while you have a rare treat to get out in the field and do something really neat.
Very much so.
And tell me about the time that you got to work with some bald eagles here in Oklahoma.
Well, we were approached by the U.S. Geological Survey to help learn where Oklahoma's eagles are moving to and from. And so we met up with some of their contractors to climb bald eagle trees, nest trees, and we put transmitters on them to actually, once they left the nest, once they fledged, then we would be able to track where they were moving.
That's awesome. Now, this was a pretty big collaborative effort. There were lots of people involved.
There was quite a few people. We initially put out a call to all of our wildlife department personnel and said, you know, if you see a nest in your county, we'd like to know, let us know if it's active or not. And then we actually were able to partner with Oklahoma Highway Patrol Air Support Team, and they were able to get in the air and get a much better look into these eagle nests, and we were able to get ages of those chicks based on their work.
Well, that's awesome. You know, I think it's always a treat to get to see one, but to really get to handle one, that was a big treat.
It was a big treat, kind of once in a lifetime treat too.
That's awesome. Now, these two gentlemen that came and did the majority of the handling and the climbing of the trees, they're not even from Oklahoma, are
They're
they?
not from Oklahoma, and I believe it was Jeff Cooper in Virginia. It was his first time to actually come into the state, and then Terry was from Arizona and came through to help out and climb the trees.
Now, they're private contractors that have been doing this for decades, literally, right?
Yes, very much so, and they're very well respected in their field. So it was a really great privilege to be out in the field with them and learn from just their experience.
That's awesome.
I could sit here and tell you, well, I've saved bald eagles, peregrine falcons, and spotted owls in my career. They've all, come off the list or come down over the years, but I was hired to work on bald eagles and peregrine falcons with the Forest Service. I started with the Washington Department of Game. I was a kid in growing up in junior high and high school. I loved animals, and like most kids, you come out, then I'll be an animal doctor, I'll be a veterinarian. But somewhere along the line, and again, a young kind of, the way a naive mind thinks, that, well, wait a minute, domestic animals are taken care of. Somebody needs to look after wild animals. So that was about the extent of my logic. I'm actually kind of second generation. I actually worked for some of the guys that were the ones that sat around a table. There were 8 of them in the late 50s, early 60s in Port Clinton, Ohio, and really came up with the concept that bald eagles were being affected by contaminants. How's it going up here, guys? Anybody home, huh? Hey, hi there. Looks like one that's going to be too small. I can't quite see. It's okay, little guy. You're okay. Every nest is different. Every tree's different. It's what keeps it fun. I mean, even after all these years, it's an art as well as a science, and you can't screw up or violate some basic things, but then it's just creativity, and everything varies. This was just spurring up, limbing over a couple of forks on the way. So then once you get stabilized, this chick was perfect as far as handling, because he just sat there and was watching me. It's like, who the heck are you and why are you up here? But it was easy. We have a grabber, it's a tripod leg with a hook in the end, so we can reach across rather than have to climb into the nest. Oh, he's only got about an inch on his Retrices. Yeah, he's a little guy. Whoa, whoa. Take it easy. Take it easy. I gotta switch hands on you, bud. Come here. Come on. Yeah. Oh, I got you. I got you. Hey, shh, shh. You're all right. You're all right, little feller. You're all right. Yeah. Take it easy, little guy. You're gonna have a lot to tell your folks later. Yes, you are. You're gonna get a pretty bracelet, and they're gonna take a little blood. Okay, here you go. Still remember a couple in Voyagers Park, just a little gray fluff ball, about 2 to 3 weeks younger than this one. That little sucker was standing at the edge of the nest with his chest out and his little stubby wings, and he was coughing at me, you know, absolutely. And I get up there, and the other chick's sitting behind peacefully. And you think, all right, I'm taking the easy chick. So this guy is under here just sticking his chest, get out of my nest, under my armpit, you know, and I'm taking the other. He was there the whole time, you know, so it's just, again, I guess I'm easy, but these guys are cute and they're fun. Tell you one story. Yeah, we were climbing a nest 2 years ago in southern Michigan, and the report was it was a couple chicks about this age. I got up there and I heard this whack, you know, and I thought, whoa, this is going to be a big brown chick like we're looking for today to put radios on. So I thought, okay, I kind of readjusting the mental image from a little easy one like this to one that's going to try and foot you or bite you or whack you with the wings. I kept climbing up, and I got to the fork under the nest, and I look up, and I was telling Don earlier, sometimes the precocial ones will actually come up over the edge of the nest and be looking at you. So I'm looking up through the sticks, and here's an adult head. I mean, she was just beyond arm's length looking over at me. It's like, holy Toledo, you know, it's like, it's not unusual to scare one off if they've stayed and they're brooding or incubating, and you'll be climbing a tree, they may or may not hear you coming. But to have one stay there, and I ended up moving around the crotch and clipping on by the nest about like this. That bird was literally at arm's length. Her head was right there. She was whacking the side of the tree trying to get at me. I never had it yet. Talk about a surprise and a shock. And I wish there were more like that, you know? We'd have been less of us screwing with them over the years. But it was an incredible experience. And that was my wildest and most extreme surprise.
This is basically a big staple gun that punches. Okay.
What we're doing here, we're putting on a USGS federal bird ban. So if this bird is recovered later, say it goes down, you know, there's a high mortality rate with juveniles. Hatchier birds probably, you know, just generically, it varies regionally based on prey and all that. About half of them are going to die their first year. So, but if this bird shows up in, I don't know, Kansas, you know, at least there's a record, or it moved from point A to point B, or if it lives, you know, I've picked up birds that have been almost 30 years old. You know, you find them and they have a ban from when they were banded, so that all goes into the federal database.
But this bird is too young to get
Too young to get a transmitter, because it still has a lot of growth to do in the next couple of weeks. So it's too hard to estimate the transmitter fit at this point. You know, either too loose or it's going to be too tight, and it may squirm out of it anyhow if it was too loose. So there's just, you really only have like a week and a half window, maybe 2 weeks, depending on the individual, to put transmitters on chicks. Be careful with his feathers, because last year I had a blood feather break. And
I can let go of his feet?
Yep, you can let go of his feet.
Okay. His hood is still on. Is that okay?
Let's get the hood off. Terry would have seen it and he went, "What did you do that for?" Right, Terry?
You probably have tons of crazy stories.
There's a few along the way. But that's what makes it interesting. Every tree is still a challenge. And I guess I was narrating to you on the microphone. I was like sitting there and wait a minute, this is not comfortable, you know, and I've been doing this long enough. You find ways to make yourself comfortable, and you can be. And it's first tree in, you know, in a while, and oh, sure, all you got to do is move this lanyard there and tighten this up. But it's fun. It's challenging. The equipment's changing. The whole techniques are changing. Half of what I'm wearing comes from caving or from mountaineering. The original saddles are from logging and arborist work. The hardware, the whole thing. So it's a fun field to be involved in, and working with these birds is always exciting. Yeah. You all right, huh? That wasn't too bad, was it?
Okay, little guy. You have a nice life, okay? See ya.
Yeah.
It was fat, man. I mean, its breast was
Yeah, I didn't really feel him that well.
really, it had just been cropped too, so that's good.
Oklahoma's on the periphery of the Eagles range, so having them here is kind of a novelty. I mean, they're typically like you picture in paintings and things, rocky sea crag and, you know, along a marine coast. They're a fish eagle. So you think, well, you don't normally think, I mean, you guys are all fishermen and you got lakes with lots of fish. Well, I guess that's what the eagles key on. So they've spread over the years since they were so few in numbers. So, you know, being in cottonwoods and in these thin stringers of riparian or along the water, or we haven't been to them yet, but we've seen nests like on the edge of fields and so forth, is a little less common. But if there's anything for bald eagles, they're adaptable and opportunistic. I've been fortunate over the years from seeing them nest in mangroves in Florida to 200-foot Doug firs and Sitka spruce in southeast Alaska. So they'll take what they can get. They're really an adaptable bird.
Well, Gina, you win some and you lose some. You don't really know if that eagle's big enough until you actually get up there.
Exactly. So that particular eagle was about 6 weeks of age. They're really looking more for an 8-week-old bird. That way, whenever they put the cellular transmitter over the back, that the wing muscles and the breast muscles are well developed, so that it doesn't, you know, get too tight on the bird eventually.
Now, there are some other risks involved, I guess you could say, in doing this. Not only are they climbing really tall trees,
Right.
but every once in a while the wind blows in Oklahoma, doesn't it?
Just every other day or so.
Yeah.
So at this particular case, Jeff and Terry, you know, assess the tree and are trying to figure out the best way to get up in the tree to get to the eagles. It was kind of a gusty day that day, and so Jeff tried to go ahead and climb the tree, and it just wasn't a safe time. So he climbed back down. We went out the next day, a little bit earlier in the day. The wind wasn't blowing as much, and both he and Terry tried to climb the tree. But unfortunately, you know, these guys are, you know, their first concern is for the bald eagle. And they've got a lot of experience. They're federally permitted to be doing this work. And, you know, they got up there, and these chicks were just at the right age where if, you know, when a predator is, and, you know, Jeff and Terry are there to help them, but they see it as a predator, you know, if it's coming up the tree, you know, they're at that age where they're going to want to get out of the tree. So, you know, Jeff and Terry are almost to the nest, and the birds look like they were going to hop out on a branch or go ahead and fly out. There was a field around instead of a river, but there's still a lot of risk to the birds that they just weren't comfortable taking that risk.
Well, Gina, it seemed on the third time we went with you, they finally had some success.
Right, third time is definitely a charm in this case.
You know, OHP was helping us to identify exactly where the nest was, as well as our cameras were able to zoom in close enough, and we knew that there were 2 up there.
We knew that there were 2, but more importantly, we knew that there were 2 chicks at the right age. So that certainly helped. We were along the Arkansas River in Kate County. We got Jeff and Terry there. They climbed up that night. We had spent most of the day at our second tree, and it was getting a little bit late, so they climbed up. We had 2 chicks that were the right age. They brought one down, and we were able to actually get a collar on there so that we could get some data started. And then we put the chick back in the nest, and it was a little bit too late. So the following morning, we came back out, climbed the tree again, and brought the second one down. So it was kind of an experience at that tree.
Jeff and I have talked, we've both had the luxury in working in different areas, and it's always fun to go to a new area and see them in a new context. I mean, it's same birds, same youngsters in the nest, but you know, different backgrounds, different species, different habitats. So it's another thing that makes it really novel and enjoyable after all these years. You know, my dad wasn't an avid outdoorsman, or I didn't come up with that outbringing. I was like so many young people today. He calls me a tree hugger. I don't know if I'm that extreme, but you know, I just came from a different background. But by the time I was applying to schools, I wanted to go to school out west. I wanted to study wildlife, and I wanted to learn to snow ski. So I ended up at Colorado State, which was back in the 60s, one of the top wildlife schools, and I've been doing it ever since. Yeah, I think hello. In the mid-60s, late 60s through the 70s, it was huge. Everybody and his brother was studying bald eagles. They were incredibly high profile. As eagles responded to management, protection, I mean, even in Arizona, we started with 2 or 3 nests, and we were able to, through management, protection, and nest watch program that the Forest Service initiated, putting volunteers to monitor nests, that population went to like 15 pairs over the period of 7 or 8 years, strictly from management and intervention. Well, that was happened nationwide. So that eventually saw the eagle, plus with the removal of the contaminants and some of the major effects, the populations have increased, and we were talking earlier, they're adaptable, opportunistic, so they've spread, you know, and they're doing well even in states like Oklahoma, where in Arizona, that's the last place on earth I thought I'd find a bald eagle. So they've come around and they've responded. Yeah, I think they're both males, Jeff, from the size of their feet. The other one's a lot quieter than this one. Coming down. Thinking it looks like we've got 2 males, you know, roughly 7 weeks I expect, something like that. You can see how he's standing upright, of course being non-photogenic with his back to us. But once they get to be 7, 8 weeks, they stand upright from then on like full birds, whereas up till that point, you know, they'll be resting on their tarsi or leg bones and sitting much lower. You can see how he's more fully feathered. Look like the primaries. His main wing feathers are maybe 8 inches out. They'll grow, of course, to roughly 10 to 12 inches by the time he flies. You know, I've been doing this, as we've hit on 3 or 4 times, a long time, and it's still just one of the coolest things to watch an eagle come down and take a fish or fly into a nest with a stick. And I mean, to me, that's what I'd say to Oklahomans. What a privilege, what a delight that you've got bald eagles around where you can see them, be on some of these reservoirs fishing and watch them. And they're a cool species, and that just never goes away. And to have that privilege, and I mean, to us, he's from Virginia, I'm from Arizona, it's a privilege to come. And like I said, to work with the familiar species, but in a different area. And I think it's exciting and something to be proud of and really appreciate.
These transmitters are really cutting edge technology. Tell me about them.
So they actually go off of cellular signal or cellular towers, and just like you can follow your map along when you're on the road, it actually records the location of that bird every 15 or 20 minutes or so, and we'll go ahead and track that bird's movement as it's flying.
So you just connect the dots and you can figure out its pattern.
You can connect the dots and figure out even how fast it's flying.
Wow.
The one that we just saw the video of putting the collar on, there were actually 2 birds in that nest, came back the following morning and put the transmitter on that second bird. And both of those birds, they were literally homebodies. The furthest I believe that we had either one of those go that I know of from the nest was, maybe 30 miles upriver or so. And just peeked in on them just now, look at where they were yesterday. And one was 5 or 6 river miles upstream from where it hatched, and the other one was just 5 or 6 miles downstream from where it hatched. They obviously they've got everything they need right there pretty close to home. And so it's interesting. We've got 4 birds that we collared here last spring. They're all still in Oklahoma. You know that they just travel this river, sandbars and perching trees and a ready food source of fish, and what I get from no further than that these birds have moved, they're finding everything that they need just here in association with the river. So it's kind of neat. We get a data point, obviously the bird perched for a while here in a tree and then, began moving downriver a little bit, 15 minutes, another 15 minutes, and this would have been the last known position. Cross your fingers, these transmitters, last 5 years, we could get to see these young birds' first nesting attempt. That would be cool. That would be cool. And these birds, as Jeff mentioned earlier, they've got a fairly high mortality rate their first year. And so we're excited that we've got 4 of these birds that survived. It's almost a year now, another 6 weeks. These birds will be a year old. And that we've got collars on them that they survived that long. We have high hopes that, they're kind of out of the woods for the hardest period in their life to survive. And assuming the technology holds up and we don't have some type of failure with the little transmitting device, potentially we could watch these birds build and incubate their first nest.
Well, Gina, I bet you wish that every day was as exciting as those few were.
Right, it was very amazing, and what's even better is we're getting data on, what a really important resource, and can make management decisions based off of that.
That's great. Hey, thanks for joining us today. For all of us at your Wildlife Department, I'm Todd Craighead, and we'll see you right here next time on Outdoor Oklahoma.